See, all he cares about is the incentive that he wants to win this month. Some of them legit did not want to do business with us because of Andy Elliott. Andy knew nothing. His confidence level, you see him online as a super big motivational speaker. He's super confident in everything. And I had a very different version of Andy on the phone. My name's Ethan Satkowski, and I run a software company called Shiftly Auto. I originally came across Andy Elliott in 2022 on a YouTube video talking about how you can make $100,000 a year in the car industry with zero college degree. And to me, it was super attractive because I was originally going to college for a business management degree so I could go into a company and obviously oversee the management of the business. And when I saw this bald, tan Jack dude telling me that I can make $100,000 a year in sales with no college degree, that was news to me. And so the very next day, I went into dealerships, started applying for that position so that I myself could go out and make $100,000 a year. And to no surprise, because dealerships do hire pretty much anybody and everybody that come around, I got a job my very first day applying at dealerships. And so over this time of the first couple of years that I was in the industry, I would religiously train on Andy Elliott's YouTube. I would do objection role play with the guys in person. I would watch all of Andy's videos on objections, on the meet and greet, on how to up customers, on how to build rapport with customers, on how to do the pencil, on all of these different things about the car industry to learn and grow and obviously increase my sales at the dealership. And it wasn't until about 2 years later that I met Andy in person. I went out to one of his seminar events. And the reason I went to one of his seminars was because I had come up with this idea of a company that I wanted to start around the car industry. I knew he was the biggest name in the space, and I knew if I could bring my product to him with a good idea using his brand, we could come together and get this out to thousands of car salesmen. And so the gist of the company that I still run to this day, and the company that I had in mind when I went and met Andy, was a Facebook listing tool. I myself, as a car salesman, posted cars on Facebook for 2.5 years that I was in the industry. And 60% of my car deals every single month came from Facebook. And so I knew it was a great platform to generate leads for myself, and thousands of car salesmen could do the exact same thing. And when I came up with this idea, I knew that it would be big, and I knew that if I got it in the right hands or leveraged the right brand, that I would be able to grow super, super quick. And so I went out to this event, went and met Andy Elliott in person. And my initial thought is, this guy's insane. I went to an event, he has his guys hyping him up before he actually walks out, and then everybody's screaming and cheering his name, and he comes behind this, everybody walks through the path and then gets on stage and continues to hype everybody up. He does a 7-8 hour seminar nonstop. He's yelling, he's screaming, he's motivating people, he's doing objections. I mean, this guy seemed like he had it all. And so after the event, it was a pretty decent event. I felt pretty motivated myself to go back home and make more money. And more importantly, felt more motivated to meet Andy and try and see if we could come together on something. And so I went up to my coach that had sold me a ticket, and I said, hey man, let's go golf. And he had actually already planned to go to Top Golf with a couple of his buddies that were in town. So we got in the car and we headed to Top Golf. And this is where it starts it all. On the way there, the coach asked me about the business idea. He said, hey man, what do you got going on? Tell me about this new thing that I've heard you talking about. I opened up, told him the entire business plan, the software, showed him it, everything. And he says, dude, that is awesome. I want to help you grow and scale that company. And so things were working in my favor. And I said to him, well, hey man, if you really want to help me grow this, let's get Andy involved. Let's get Andy pushing this on social media. He thought it was a great idea too. And he took me over to Andy Elliott's house at about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. When we get there, I see Andy outside, still in the same clothes that he was at the entire event that he spoke at for 7-8 hours. This dude was on the phone closing a $25,000 deal at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night on the phone while his family's inside. I'm like, man, this guy does not stop. This guy is relentless. This guy is here for his team. He's showing up. He's a true leader, right? And I'm seeing this firsthand as we pull up to his house. He's still got to meet me after and talk to me for 30 to 45 minutes at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And so as we get there, he waves over at us. He comes up, he says, what's up? He says, let me wrap up this phone call. Fair enough. Took him about an extra 15 minutes, and then we started to talk. So I break down everything to Andy. I said, hey, here's what I talked about. Here's my idea. Here's how successful it's been for me over the past couple of years. Here's what it does. Here's how it works. Here's a video of it. And a couple of clients that have already been using it and already seeing an extra 5 to one of them up to 9 extra sales per month. And he said, dude, that's phenomenal. He said, let's scale this company to the moon. Here's the idea that I have in mind. We can do an Instagram reel and we can do a podcast. And the price was $5 grand for an Instagram reel and $25,000 for a podcast, bundled deal at 30 grand. And so at this time, everything moved so quick. I went from brand new out of high school into the industry because of Andy Elliott. I had trained relentlessly on this guy's stuff, and I'd finally made it out to his house in person to pitch him on a business product that I kind of came up with because I was in the industry and I used social media to my advantage. At that time, I'm stoked. I'm a 21-year-old dude, 20-year-old dude at the time, and I'm ready to start a freaking company, and I've got Andy Elliott ready to back me. So I did what any 20-year-old would. I put my money where my mouth was, believed in my product, and put $5,000 on the line to create an Instagram reel. And this is where our true partnership affiliate started. So he tells me, go ahead and cancel your flight, because it was the next day at 6 a.m. and I needed to come back to his house on Sunday to film this reel. So I canceled my flight. I got a new flight, which cost me an extra $1,000. By the way, going to this event cost me over $10,000. This was a lot of money for me to spend at the time, especially as a 20-year-old making $10,000 a month. But I believed in the company, I believed in the vision, and I believed that Andy Elliott would help me get there. So I spent the money, and I go back the next day on Sunday and we film the reel. It was posted about 3 weeks later, and that's when we got the first batch of leads in, made a couple sales, and things were seeming to go pretty well. I decided to quit my job and go full-time in this just about 2 to 3 weeks after the reel launched. I had a good source of leads coming in. The product was proven. People were loving it. They were purchasing it. They loved the idea of it. We're getting results with it. So I took the company full time. And I did this October 23rd of 2023, ironically a day before my 21st birthday. And so now we're gonna jump to where the partnership actually happened, which was a couple short months later. It's actually at the beginning of 2024. I believe it was March 1st. Now, throughout this time from when I actually went full time to March 24th, I had actually already grown pretty substantially at the time. It started as just me. I had another sales guy on at this time. He actually just referred his buddy to be a salesperson as well. We were already running Facebook ads at this time, so we were a little bit more established than obviously a company that is literally just a startup, has no leads coming in, has no proof of concept, if you will. I mean, it did to an extent, but at this point in time, we had already had around 150 clients. I'd already been out to a couple more events in this time with some buddies, met some new people, been around the Elliott Group, really connected with one of their coaches, and things were going good. And at this time, the coach came and pitched me on an entire partnership agreement between Schiffley Auto and Andy Elliott that he had constructed. So it was a 3-year contract, and this is how it was structured. Right now on screen, you should see the tier system that they have put together for the entire 3 years. So the way it works is obviously the amount of revenue that I pay them gets me to the next tier level. So the first tier was something like a story post every week, so about 4 story posts a week. Tier 2 gave me a booth. Tier 3 was Andy Elliott training the team, something of the sort. You guys should see it on the screen now. It was a 3-year contract. Andy didn't want to get into a contract unless it was a minimum of 3 years, because obviously he's bringing his brand, which is about 1 million followers at the time, attaching it to Schiffley Auto's brand that was maybe 2,000 followers. And so it made sense. We did a 3-year contract, and these were the tier systems. The company wasn't making a substantial amount of money to be able to pay the Elliott Group more than $10,000 a month at 30% of gross profit. So we started off in tier 1. We were supposed to get 4 story posts from Andy Elliott, which only really got 2 that month. And the reason for this was that the coaches and Andy were too busy to remember to actually deliver on what they had said they would. And so obviously to us, this is our first time seeing what a true partnership looks like. And we're already looking at it man, we're investing a lot of money with these people. We just committed to a 3-year contract, and they're already not delivering on everything that they said they would. And so despite how well that reel did getting us off the ground, Andy Elliott's story posts really weren't getting us that many leads. I mean, I'm talking about 10 to maybe 15 leads. And his brand was substantially bigger than it was when I did the first reel. So this didn't really add up to me. We're not getting the story posts that we should, or at least the amount that we should. And the leads that are coming in are very few. And so I was already starting to feel a little bit weird about the partnership, but ultimately I trusted the Elliott Group. I trusted the coach that I was working with. And I decided, obviously, let's keep going with this. Let's just keep growing the team. Let's just keep pumping more money into ad spend. And let's start putting Andy on the ads to leverage the partnership that we have in our ads, so that more people are seeing his face, they're coming through, and they already have the belief that that product works. And so that's what we did. Month 2, we started putting Andy in the ads, and we started to get a little bit of traction from especially car salesmen that loved Andy Elliott, that were coming through the funnel. And of course, as bad of a name that Andy has out there in the dealership space because of what happened in the past with the Kia dealership, we of course got a ton of hate comments of, this guy sucks, I'll never be a customer of yours because you're doing business with this guy. But stuff happens. You create a big name on social media and you get a lot of hate. So I wasn't really worried about that at the time. Also, during month 2, we hired more salespeople now. So the team went from 2 salespeople to 4 or maybe 5 at the time. And things were going pretty decent. We were spending a lot more money on ads. We got more people on our team, and we were obviously getting more clients on board. And at the end of month 2, we were still in tier 1. Again, the company still wasn't making enough money in gross profit because of how much we were spending on the back end, obviously with ads and everything else. We didn't have enough to pay them over $10,000 to get into that tier 2 bump. But I was offered by the coach to pay a little bit more to be able to get a booth at the event. So we owed them a little bit under $10,000, and he said if I push it to $15,000, they'll give me a booth at the event. The entire team can come out. We can talk to people live in person at an event that had 800 car salesmen at it, right? That we would be able to talk to live in person. So I did it. You know, obviously I trusted these guys and said, hey, let's take it to the next level. I've never tried a booth before. If there's 800 car salesmen at this event, this is gonna be a great event for us to talk about our product. And obviously Andy Elliott's people already spent a lot of money to be there and they're willing to invest in themselves. Sounds like a great event. So we took the guys out there. It was originally me, it was my brother who just started at Schiffley at the time. It was and one other sales guy that he had brought on named Ryan. So 4 of us at this event, we thought we should have a pretty good turnout, right? Well, we go to the event on the day, I believe it was a Sunday, and turns out we could have actually been there on Saturday to set up and do this like workout booth, which we weren't told about until after the fact. We already missed out on an extra day that we could have been talking to people. Whatever, it's fine. Let's focus on the next day. Let's do well. Let's just push, some numbers. Let's talk to some people. Let's get some people signed up on the software, help some people out. Well, the event day comes around and we're outside in this booth. Everybody's starting to walk in, right? Everybody's in a line. Nobody's really like paying attention to the booths, right? So we go up and we start to talk to some people, start to have some conversations for only about 10 to 15 minutes before everybody gets inside to this event and the event starts. I believe we got 2 deals out at that time, being able to talk to some people before the event actually started. So we're sitting in this event and we're like, man, when are we really gonna have enough time to be able to talk to people, to sign up a good amount of people or at least get our name out there? So lunch comes around and we're talking to more people, right? What our mistake was during this time is that we were not structured or prepared at the time. And this is a little bit on our part, right? For not understanding what the best way to tackle this event was. We only ended up signing up about 6 to 7 people at the event because we spent all of our time talking to that specific person. And at the time, our pitches were about 20 to 30 minutes, showing them everything, building rapport, right? Getting an understanding of where they're at now. Obviously, we've got a lot better sense, but our pitches at this time were 20 to 30 minutes. So we ended up paying $15,000 for this booth. And again, we didn't feel like we were actually taken, seriously. Like, hey, we're gonna promise you the world. We're gonna have 100 people over at your booth. Tons of people are gonna be interested. We got 800 car salesmen here. And not even everybody was a car salesman. There was a bunch of real estate people. There was a bunch of roofers. There was a bunch of solar people, like door-to-door salesmen. Of course, there was car salesmen here and there too. But we were promised so much to get what seemed like so little. We paid $15,000. We maybe did about $4,000 to $5,000 in deals. And so this was month 3, and the story posts still weren't happening consistently. We got 1 story post that month when we were supposed to get 4, and obviously this booth didn't turn out the way it should be, and we didn't get the time and attention that we should have got from a coach, and at least in our eyes, to make it worthwhile. And so we were starting to feel a little bit of hesitation within the partnership agreement being locked in for 3 years because we felt like all these guys really wanted was our money, and they didn't really ever show up and want to actually help the team grow. The only time he really checked in with me was, hey, how much did you do last month in profit? How much do you owe us? And here's the wire instructions to send us the money. Any other time that I tried to chat, it was a very short conversation. He didn't really have time to chat and wanted to just really get off the phone. But the business was still growing. Using Andy's name did help us a little bit, especially as we were still a new company. We rocked and rolled with it. And we actually did end up hiring somebody from the event as they knew about Schiffley. They were a user of Schiffley and they liked Andy Elliott. They were at this event. We ended up hiring. So despite not making the money, it was actually good that we were able to hire somebody moving into the next month, and we looked at that as the positive. We had other people joining our team at the time. We were scaling, we were growing. We just said, hey, we'll put this in the past, we'll keep going, we'll mention this to them, and we'll hope that it gets better, right? We're locked into this 3-year contract. What can we do otherwise? So month 4 comes around, and the coach mentions to me, hey man, if we really want to take your business to the next level, we tried this with somebody else, I'd love to try it with you. Let's create Schiffley events. Your business and Andy's business, you guys serve the same clientele. Let's do an event where it's half you speaking and half Andy speaking. Sounds great, dude, let's do it. How does the event tickets work? Who makes the money there? Who's selling the tickets? Who's promoting the tickets? All of these questions that weren't answered. He's like, I don't know, man, we'll figure it out. But hey, in order to do that, we need to completely restructure the partnership. Are you cool with that? I said, what does that look like? He said, we're gonna need 30% of gross revenue. We're gonna need 30% equity of your business. And at 3 years, we have to sell your company so that we can cash out our equity. And what I failed to mention right before this is I had already planned to move to Arizona 3 weeks from when he first mentioned that. I said, hey man, let's throw this to the side. I'm coming out to Arizona. I'm moving to be around you guys. We're gonna do more content together. We're gonna scale the company together. I got a lot going on right now. I just hired 2 more people. I'm setting up all the logistics in terms of what house we're gonna rent, how I'm gonna move everything from this house down to Arizona. I said, that's a big business decision. Let's talk about it in Arizona when I'm there. And so obviously I had some questions that need to be answered, and I needed to feel more confident to give somebody 30% equity of the company, 30% gross revenue, and sell in 3 years so that they can cash out their equity. And so at the time he said, that's understandable, man. Let's have a conversation when you get to Arizona. No big deal. Love you, bro. Let's chat soon. So 3 weeks later comes around. I'm moving to Arizona. I have everything in the packing truck. We got our house locked in for Arizona that we're renting, that we purposely chose to be close to Fountain Hills so that obviously we could drive up to the Elliott Group and make content with these guys. And I kid you not, as soon as I cross the New Mexico border, I get a call from the coach. And he says, hey man, I just had a conversation with the management team. We're going to have to restructure the partnership or we're no longer interested in being partnered. I said, what are you talking about? The 3-year partnership that we have? He said, yes. I said, what do you have in mind? Said, you know that what I mentioned to you 3 weeks ago, we're gonna need 30% gross revenue, we're gonna need 30% equity, and you have to sell in 3 years so that we can cash out our equity. I said, I don't know, man. Like I said, let's have this conversation when I'm there. I'm literally driving right now. I'll be there today. We can have this conversation over the weekend. That, by the way, we had an event to go to that weekend. It was a Thursday. The event was Saturday or Sunday. My entire team was coming out. And we were given this event because they didn't deliver on the story post, so they made up for it by giving us a booth. And so I said, hey man, let's put this until next week. We got the event coming up. I'm literally moving to Arizona. Let's have a conversation in person. There's a couple things I want to chat with you about before we, pencil this and actually move forward with something like that. I mean, that's a big deal. He said, oh man, you can't come to the event unless we sign the new partnership agreement. I said, man, we're literally in a 3-year contract. You can't really change that now. Right? Well, he started to say all these things like, you're not a good guy, you do business below the belt, and everything I asked him, he had nothing to say about. I said, give me one way I do business below the belt. Give me one way that I'm a bad guy. Give me one way that I do any of the things that you have just claimed on this phone call. Nothing to say. All he said was, you're not willing to work with me? It was clear that at this point in time, they had barely delivered. They wanted to force me to give them 30% equity of my business, give them 30% gross revenue, and to sell the company in 3 years so they could cash out their equity. He didn't even care to ask me how I was doing on the road trip or how the business was doing or anything of the fact. Literally just, hey, we need more revenue of your business or else we don't really want to be partnered with you. And so at this time I felt sick to my stomach. I literally had up and moved my life to Arizona for these guys so that I could be closer, and I knew that he leveraged everything against me at this time to make me say yes and crumble. And the funny thing was, about 2 months ago, he said, hey man, there's this really big incentive that Andy's doing. It's a 3-month incentive. I want to win this. I really need to win this. This is super important to me. And he's like, dude, if you got anybody that you can refer to me that has ever, talked about Andy Elliott seminars or anything, refer them over, bro. I always had your back. You get my back. I said, got you, brother. Sent him over some people as well that bought some tickets. I knew that everything at this point in time and how all the conversations had dwindled down in the past 2 months, that this incentive meant more to him than our relationship and our business actually doing well. He was starting to lack on the deliverables, didn't have Andy Elliott actually posting on his story as he was supposed to manage and maintain, and now he wants to change everything in the partnership even though he hasn't been performing, and he had no excuse or he didn't even feel sorry. So I felt absolutely sick to my stomach. What will I tell the team that has flights for this event and we're not going to be going? And I thought to myself over this hour, how has the last 3 to 4 months been? Aside from him actually posting us as much as he should, aside from everything that's happened with that, how has having him in the ads been? How has everything else been? And I started to call up some of the guys. I said, hey man, how's everything been going? How has Andy Elliott been in the ads been? How is, how have sales been? How has everything been on the phone? What have you been hearing objections wise? Because I wanted to really feel that if I made that big of a decision, that obviously Andy Elliott being in our ads and helping our business grow would be a positive decision, and obviously I was questioning that. And he told me this, honestly man, a lot of people recently, they all bring up the Kia dealership thing and they all don't really seem to like Andy, because we were running ads with and without Andy. He said most of them don't even see the ad with Andy. They said, oh, you guys are partnered with Andy? I don't know, man. And obviously we still get some of them done because we have a good product, but some of them legit did not want to do business with us because of Andy Elliott. Now, of course, we still got some people through the funnel that loved Andy Elliott, that said, hey, I love that you guys are partnered with him. Some of them were literally ready to sign up on the phone because they just saw Andy Elliott. But he said most of the time, it's the people that don't like Andy Elliott now. He's like, when we first started running the ads, we got a lot of people that liked him, and now a lot of people don't actually like that we do business with him. I don't know if something just came out about him and they're really pushing the story now, or he did something else, but a lot of these people are getting pissed off when I tell them anything about Andy Elliott, so I just stopped mentioning it in the pitch. I used to say, hey, did you hear that we're partnered with Andy Elliott, the best training company in the world? And I stopped saying that, man. He said, I just started saying like, hey, this is what we do. here's how we can help you, obviously getting to know them a little bit, and stop mentioning Andy Elliott. And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, I'm obviously not going to let them force the needle on me, especially when they're not really providing that big of an impact. And I started to question everything about the partnership. The whole time he's focused on only money. The whole time they're not delivering. And number three, he tried to force this on me at the worst time possible, as he knows that I'm moving to Arizona. I'm literally in the moving truck. I've got everything happening right now. I've got the team coming out at this event. He literally picked the best time to put everything against me and in his favor. And the funniest thing of all of this is that in the new contract, it said no deliverables. Of course, because they weren't holding up the deliverables that they were supposed to on the previous contract that we had already agreed upon. And so you're coming to me as somebody that I've been partnered with for 4 months that hasn't delivered, hasn't really helped a business grow tremendously, hasn't checked in on the company, hasn't seen anywhere else how they can help, and just asking for more money and forcing to be implemented a new contract that is way different than the first one that you agreed upon and that you yourself came up with. So after I've gathered all my thoughts, I said, you know what? I'm gonna call Andy and see how he feels about this, if he's actually the one in on this. As the coach had told me, yeah, man, I've talked to Andy, he feels the exact same way. So I had to just make sure for myself. I thought it was too good. I couldn't trust this coach anymore. I couldn't trust that Andy Elliott was actually behind this. I couldn't trust that everything that he was saying was truthful, and he was obviously trying to leverage Andy's name again because he knew that I really trusted Andy Elliott. So I texted Andy Elliott, I said, hey man, when can we chat? I've got something to talk to you about. And we get connected on the phone, and I start off by saying, hey man, this coach, he's been super unprofessional with me, and he immediately cuts me off and said, I've never heard anybody say that he's been unprofessional. Nobody's ever said that. I know that you guys have a great relationship. Forget everything that's happened in the last 36 hours. Have a chat with him again. Let's get back rocking and rolling. Let's scale the company. I've always loved you. I've always loved what you're doing. I've always loved your company. I've always loved your product. I've always loved your people, man. I always loved, working with you as well. So, dude, get back on the phone with him. Let's work this out. Forget everything that's happened in the last 36 hours, and let's get through this. And I said, yeah, man, I understand, but I don't really feel the same way about you guys anymore. And I just wanted to break this down to you and kind of help you understand where I'm at with everything, what's happened in the last 36 hours. And so I tried to bring up things to Andy, and he didn't really want to talk about it. Another thing that was mentioned by this coach on the phone call of why we need to restructure the agreement is I wasn't paying them enough money of what they're actually worth. And I asked Andy, I said, hey, this far into our contract and our partnership, where were you expecting us to be in revenue, I guess paying you guys at this point in time? He had nothing to say. His exact words were, I wouldn't say like there was a specific set amount or anything. It's just, the reason that this doesn't work is because, we need to be paid on gross revenue. I told the coach from the start that, gross profit wouldn't work and gross revenue has to be the way. And so he stuttered. He had no idea what we had even paid him. He had no idea where he even wanted to be at. And he was literally just going off of what the coach had mentioned. And I could tell this because he told me that the coach wasn't in the room. And I then asked Andy, well, Andy, how much did we pay you last week? And again, he didn't know, and the coach actually spoke up and said $15,000. And so I knew that everything was a lie at this point, especially with the coach. The coach told me Andy already knew about this. Andy did not know about it. Andy's trying to play the sides of the coach. He had no idea what was even going on in the conversations other than that we were obviously having some type of dispute. Andy knew nothing. His confidence level, you see him online as a super big motivational speaker. He's super confident in everything. And I had a very different version of Andy on the phone. It was still his voice. You could tell that it was him and the way that he said stuff. I've always loved you. I've always loved the things you do. That's just the way he talks. It was not the same Andy. He was super incompetent. He was super unprepared for the conversation, had no idea what was going on. And to add on to that point, I then asked Andy, I said, hey, I'll talk to the coach again, but let me ask you this, Andy. You guys have already told my team that we can come to this event at the end of this week that you're running, this booth. We can have a booth at this event. Can me and my team come to this event? And he told me this, get on the phone with the coach, work everything out, man. He'll go everything through you. Started again. He said, he'll go through everything for you, bro. Like he'll get you good to go. Like, just get on the phone with him. I'm gonna have him call you right now. Just work everything out with him. I know you guys have been boys for a long time. I know you guys will work through things together. So he still couldn't give me a yes or a no of whether I could come to his event or not. So it started to feel like I wasn't even partnered with Andy to begin with. I was actually partnered with a coach from the Elliott Group that was leveraging Andy's social media and just getting Andy to post whenever obviously he needed him to. So the conversation ended with Andy. I said, hey, I'll get on the phone with the coach. We'll see what we can do. I get on the phone with the coach to see if anything else had, changed since Andy and I's conversation, if he was willing to work with us on the original partnership agreement or anything, to align with that. And I asked him, hey man, can we come to the event and then can we work this out on Monday as we originally discussed? And he said, no, but you can pay 15 grand just for the booth and whatever else you owe us for the month, and then we can go from there. I said, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. So I decided, after a reflection of everything, he tried to charge me here. Obviously, all he cares about is the incentive that he wants to win this month. And he did not care about us or the business at all. What does it matter if I go to the booth for 15 grand or for free to him? Andy said it was all up to him. I knew that all he cared about was money. And so I decided to, after a reflection of the 100 or so days that we were partnered with them, to go in on Monday and tear up the agreement. And so after this, obviously the team couldn't go to the event. We didn't go to the event that weekend. We instead got together. We reflected on everything. We came up with a vision. We had a fire lit under all of our asses, and we freaking scaled the company. And it's about 9 months later now. We're in a brand new office. We're hiring way more people this month to continue to scale the company. We now have over 1,400 clients that are with us, and we're doing better than we ever could have imagined. And I honestly just look back at this whole situation and thank God for taking me out of the situation when he could. I can imagine still being partnered with them to this day and them not actually showing up on the deliverables and then us still having to pay them as we have scaled the company internally. We put in the structure to the team. We hired more people. We invested in our team. We did all these things to grow the company, to continue pushing forward, and the Elliott Group would have just taken a piece for doing really nothing except for putting Andy's name on our brand. And honestly, it just wasn't working out the way that we originally intended it to when we first started that first reel with Andy, and it really started to kick off our brand. It got us our first 60 to 80 leads. But at this point in time, we could generate leads for $3 to $4 on our own ads, and we could do far greater in terms of results. So I made this video to let you know about my experience with the Elliott Group, and ultimately to say that, I don't have any hard feeling against Andy. I have every experience that I've actually had with Andy in person. He seemed like a great guy. He was always caring. I had great podcast sessions with Andy. We did 2 podcasts. When I went over to his house for the reel, I met him then, and obviously all of the other events that I've been at, I talked to Andy for a couple of minutes here and there. And every interaction that I had with Andy was far different than my overall experience with the Elliott Group. And so I make this video to say that I think, once you scale too big and you give all the power to the wrong people, it can really tear down your company. I think that's a lot of what the Elliott Group is experiencing right now. I'm not the only one to have a bad experience, and this is again why I'm making this video. I've heard a lot of bad experiences recently over the past, I would say, year or so with the Elliott Group. And I feel like they give a lot of power to their salespeople and not to Andy. And the second reason I made this video is to say, protect yourself. Any contract that you make sure to have a lawyer look it over, make sure that you're protected and not just the other company. It's a mistake that I made. I didn't really have a lawyer check it over. I kind of just said, hey dude, we're good to go. Let's get this thing rolling. Read it over myself. Everything looked good. I didn't make sure that myself was protected as the business owner. And that's something that I would really encourage and something that I learned on as a business owner with that partnership. And so as we wrap this up, I would say 2 things. Trust the team and trust the data. Trust the people that you pour into and trust the numbers that are in your business, not always trusting the people that are on the outside that want to help you grow your business, right? Like in this case, the Elliott Group. So thank you guys so much for watching the video and tuning into my story. If you want to learn more about how we help car salesmen sell more cars through social media, you can subscribe down below. Leave a like if you liked the video, and we'll see you guys in the next video.